Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have me.
This is our horror movie podcast. We get together, we've watched the movie, we talk about it. It's really quite that simple. And in this episode, we're actually finally getting to a sequel that came out recently. It went straight to Shudder. Was the first one on Shudder? I can't remember.
I don't think so. I think the first one was on Netflix, or at least that's when I first saw it, I think.
Yeah, that's weird. But this is May the Devil Take You 2, or May the Devil Take You Chapter 2, as IMDb's telling me. So I wonder if that's a regional thing. But either way, it's the sequel to May the Devil Take You, which is a film we did a couple of years ago when it came out, at least in the West. And it had kind of a very serious, like scary vibe at points, but also kind of a wacky Evil Dead-esque quality at times as well. Kind of mixed those and blended those together fairly successfully. I think we were fairly positive on the movie. There was just there was enough things wrong with it to not be a home run, though. That was essentially where we landed, I think.
Yeah.
But so we got a sequel here. So we're going to get into it. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do, and we will give you warning somewhere in the middle before we do that. So, the premise of this one is interesting because I have to admit I didn't really remember a whole lot about the original film plot wise, and the relevant stuff kind of came rushing back whenever it became relevant in the movie. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this now, and I remember that now. But Alfie, who was kind of the lead character of the first film, has survived with the younger character Nara, and they are basically brought in basically by force. They're essentially kidnapped by a group of characters who need her help because they're dealing with their own ghost/demonic problem. And from there it kind of spirals, and we get kind of it's a similar kind of setting where we've got this like house out in the middle of nowhere, which honestly was kind of my first like almost problem. I mean, not problem, but minor disappointment, because the opening scene was just in an apartment building, and I thought there was a couple of really effective scares in the first like 15 minutes. So when they took them to like a house in the middle of nowhere, it's like, oh wait, we did this last time though. Like there was a house in the middle of nowhere. I thought, I was looking forward to it being like in an apartment building for like a completely different setting, or do some different stuff with that kind of thing. But that's relatively minor on the complaint side though, because I think this sequel does a lot of the same things well that the first one did. It also kind of has some of the same problems. The first one being that it is almost 2 hours long, and that is just too much for this. This needs to be tighter, it needs to be quicker paced. 90 minutes, give or take, should be the target, but I've already jumped in with my kind of opinion. So, Tim, how did you feel about May the Devil Take You 2?
I mean, I think I'm on a pretty similar page. I'll be honest, I'm slightly disappointed. I don't think it's a bad movie by any stretch, but I really like the first one. I think we're on a similar page with the first one as well, where, like you said, it's not a home run, but there was a lot of stuff that I really liked about it. So I was really excited for this. I was kind of expecting it to, kind of come come out swinging, and like the first one got like a lot of comparisons to having kind of like an Evil Dead 2 kind of vibe, and I was expecting this to maybe be kind of like Evil Dead 2, where it's maybe embraces a lot of the kind of like more intense gory stuff from the first one, and really goes full throttle with it, but instead I think we get kind of a mixed bag where when it is doing like creepy ghost demon stuff, I absolutely love the movie, but then there's so much like of a slog in between, because like you said, there's like a pretty good opening, but then I just feel like there's 30 40-ish minutes of this really boring stuff with, I don't know, these characters I honestly don't care about, but then there is a point where stuff starts happening again, and I did get really excited and interested in it again. I was like, okay, here we go. Like the rest of the movie is just going to be like a roller coaster, but then it does kind of slow down a bit again. And then it kind of picks up again. So it's a little uneven. And you already mentioned it though, but I think the big problem is just, it's so long. Like trim it down, get it to like a really nice lean 90 minutes, and yeah, you can have something here. But
yeah, the momentum is maybe the big thing. And
yeah,
what's, because I think the Alfie's still very sort of likable and is still kind of a badass,
definitely.
and you've got that element there. I think the big positives of this is that whenever it is doing something ghostly or demony, for the vast majority of the time, it actually does look kind of creepy and cool. And
Yes.
somehow takes moments that would be very tropey and generic in other like movies, typically Western movies, and there's just enough of its own flair. And I don't know if it's the performance, the makeup, whatever, but when there's a demon like behind someone, and like sort of like with the quiet scream, or even just the main ghost in this, who's this kind of like evil guy, who we'll get into in spoilers exactly who he is and whatever, but even just the way he smiles at people is actually genuinely kind of disturbing. And I'm like, you know what, it's actually really good at these moments, and it also honestly has some pretty good, if you want to call them jump scares. I think they're good jump scares. There's some good moments where lights are coming on and off, and then like something will appear. And I think one of the things that it does, and this is such a simple little thing, is we often complain that the loud noise with a jump scare. What this oddly does is that at least a couple of times it'll do the loud noise, but it'll do the loud noise kind of late. It'll let you sort of soak in the quiet jump scare, and then it'll do a loud noise to sort of like almost punctuate it after the fact. Like you've already had the creepy initial boom, and then you go rah afterwards. Yeah, and it kind of works a little bit better.
And there's a lot of really like good background stuff if you're paying attention. That's like, and again, it's not even like outside of like jump scare kind of stuff. Like there'll be stuff where just maybe something like a chair or something will move in the background and no one's like really paying attention to it and seeing it. So there's a lot of like subtle creepy stuff like that if you're paying attention to it, that it is really cool and spooky. But
that stuff is pretty solid. And then also solid is some of the the gore, some of the actual fighting of possessed people or demons or whatever. Like that for the most part is really good. What the movie lacks maybe a little bit compared to the first is the first one was so surprising. When the first one started doing more over the top gory stuff, it was like, whoa, this movie's got this. With this one, it's less of a surprise, so there's maybe this like expectation for it to top the first one, and I don't know if it ever does. Now, admittedly, my memory of the first one is a little bit vague, but
mine as well.
I never really felt like it was going further with any of that for the most part.
No,
but it was embracing some other things. I don't want to say what it is, but there's kind of like a weird thing towards the end. It's kind of like a spoiler, but it's also kind of a really cool, ridiculous, like heavy metal kind of thing that they decide to start doing, and so I kind of appreciated that. There's a lot to like in the movie, despite the faults that we're going to like say about it, despite the problems that we have. Much like the first one, there's a lot of good, and not even just good. Some of the elements are genuinely great. And the elements that were great in the first one are generally still pretty great in this one, and in some cases maybe even a little bit better. That said, I do think the first one is the better movie overall because it was surprising. The story's a bit tighter. This is kind of like a group of other characters had their own problems, so they sort of like brought our main character into it.
I think in a way it kind of makes it even more frustrating because you have something that's like so close to knocking it out of the park, where like because a lot of times if something's bad, it's just kind of bad all around. So it's like, oh man, it's just kind of frustrating that it's like everything about this is working on such a good level that it's like, really, if you just tighten up a few things here and there, and again, maybe it sounds like I'm being too negative because overall I like the movie, I'm positive on it. It's just like, when you do like something, like certain parts more, I don't know, it also makes the parts that you don't like stand out more or whatever. But I mean, I do agree. I think the first one's stronger. I mean, these are both movies I'd like to, watch again someday because, the horror elements I do think are so strong in them. But I mean, even though despite the negative stuff aside, though, I think these are two really really cool horror films. Like, I'm glad we got.
It's worth mentioning that the like, as much as we're talking about like complaints and we're talking about where it doesn't completely knock it out of the park, but the actual quality here of both this and its original are still way above like the baseline of the average thing we review on here. Like we review a lot of crap. This is
Yeah.
you know these are
For
far better and actually very enjoyable. So when we complain about pacing issues or things that it does fall short on, it comes from a frustration because it is almost like special. It's almost special and it doesn't quite get there, and that's kind of upsetting. And I think the sequel falls into that kind of realm too. So as far as other elements to talk about in spoiler free, a lot of stuff does kind of carry forward from the first one. Like I say, creepy ghost stuff really good, demon stuff good. The new characters they're just kind of whatever. There's not much it kind of feels like they're there for the body count. Like we need some characters that can be beaten up and killed and whatever is essentially why they exist. And I think that the problem there is that even from very early on, it's like, okay, there's only maybe one of these characters who's probably going to survive, if any. And I was like, I would like if there was maybe an unpredictability there, because look, it's going to feel really cheap if every single new character dies and it's only the same two characters who survive again. It has to kind of like, someone has to survive to make it feel like we've added someone of value in the sequel. And I won't say if that does or does not happen, but I will say that it's not that surprising.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
I'll be completely honest, and I think a big part of it was because I didn't really remember everything super clearly from the first movie, but I feel like I was confused a lot, like during the beginning, as to who some of these characters were and how they like related to each other and everything. And this is going to be like a lot of spoiler stuff that we'll get into, but it was kind of distracting for me. Like like pretty quickly I remembered, oh yeah, okay, Alfie, I remember her from the first movie. Oh, okay. But then like all these new characters introduced and stuff, and who they are and like what they're trying to do. Like for a while I kept trying to think of like, wait, and am I supposed to know who these people are, or was this something from the first movie that I'm forgetting? But yeah, it was a bit distracting to me. But I mean, we'll get into it like in spoilers, but
yeah. The only confusing element I had is that when they started talking about the evil guy in their life that the whole thing's revolving around, I was like wondering for a second, because we only sort of see like a photograph from like an angle, and I was like, wait, is this supposed to? Because I didn't remember what her dad looked like, because the whole thing about the first movie is that it was like the stepmom and the stepsisters and that, and like whoever go to the house to deal with the fact that the father died, and they find all this stuff that he's like, oh, he was into the occult, and that's why all this is happening, blah blah. And I because it's been a long time since I've seen the first one, I was like, wait, is this her dad? Like, is the point of this that her dad was also doing this? But it's not. It's a different character. It's just a different guy. But
I think I had that same issue for a bit. Yeah.
In fact, the later in the movie, it kind of makes it clear with a quick flashback that the same mysterious woman like gave him this like demonic Bible that gave Alfie's father the demonic Bible. Because I remembered her as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, I recognize this character. I recognize this from the first movie. It's kind of weird because it's like, can we really criticize it for like us not being able to remember the first one super clearly? Yeah. I mean, maybe you could say the first one should be more memorable, but we also watch a lot of movies, so I don't know if I want to necessarily do that.
Yeah,
I think it's okay.
Yeah, because it's not like we watched the first one that long ago. Like it'd probably been what, 2 years,
2 or 3, whenever it came out.
Yeah, because I feel like it like it'd be one thing if it was like 10 years ago or something, but like that
was 2 years. Came out in 2018, so yeah,
okay,
2 years.
Yeah, so that's not super long.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And there is some concepts, and like the story that comes with these characters, I do think has a couple of interesting concepts that I appreciated later on, and that does throw a couple of wrenches into the overall like not formula. It's weird to say this is a formula per se, because obviously it's just the second movie, but it does shake up things a little bit, but maybe not enough as much as I would have liked. but it does
Sure.
throw in some extra elements that change things up a little bit. And I will say that unlike the first one, I do feel that the ending of this kind of like really heavily says we want to do a third one. There's a heavy sort of like, hey, there's a whole game plan here. There's a mythology that we want to cap off with Alfie particularly.
I'd be cool with that.
Yeah. I mean, we'll check it out and we'll see how it is, and but yeah. So that is I think
Alfie of Darkness.
Alfie versus the Army of Darkness. So that's we'll get to spoilers. So I'll take this time to thank our Patreon producers at the time of recording. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Boardnow, Al Tribesman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are Patreon producers at the time of recording, meaning that you are $20 or more patrons on patreon.com/MailedFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month and get access to the back catalogue of bonus episodes at just the $1 tier. $5 you get, of course, early access by a day to all new episodes coming out. And some other stuff as well, so go and have a look and see if you're interested. The bonus episodes are on break. They're on pause until sometime mid-late spring, while Tim's on paternity leave, going to be a baby daddy. What's the going phrase now, Timmy? Are you hoping for daddy or papa or pap or faja maybe?
Faja. I don't know. I don't think I don't think the babies speak right away, so I'm aware. I think I have some time.
I'm aware of that. Thank you very much. I'm saying that when the baby does eventually speak, and with your genes, who knows how many years that'll take, but
it'll be fast. It'll be very smart.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sure week three is going to be doing Shakespeare soliloquies and all sorts.
Yeah, I don't know. I just whatever it wants to call me, as long as it says it with love. That's all I care about.
Yo, bitch, where's my breakfast? What if the kid says that?
If it's with love, that's fine.
Oh, bitch, where's my breakfast?
Oh, bitch. Come here, bitch.
One day when your child discovers this YouTube archive and watches some of these episodes as we speculate what sort of weird little creature they might be, there might be some amusement. That's it.
I don't believe in censorship, but yeah, there will be certain YouTube channels I'll make sure they don't watch.
Well, MailedFuzz TV is one of them. that's on the blacklist, the blackball list.
They can watch Ace. Ace is fine, but
okay, but that screams.
Yeah.
Okay.
and not Multiverse.
No, nothing but Connor.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah.
I don't want him getting any ideas.
Exactly. Yes. Very very suspicious activity. Yes, may arise if one pays too much attention to Connor. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. So full spoilers then for May the Devil Take You to.
And we didn't mention it's TOO.
That's true, yeah. I just assumed everyone could tell that, but obviously it sounds the same. Yeah. It actually, it's spelled TOO. So, which makes me think, what would the third one be called? May the Devil Take You Also?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
But, so, yeah, the opening of the film actually isn't Alfie. Alfie's the second scene. The opening of the film is we're introduced to the character of, I believe it's Gaddis.
Garrus.
Yeah. And she is bruised and her friend comes to visit her, and we don't really get the context of what's going on. Like, it kind of sounds like maybe she had an abusive husband who's been gone for a long time. That's not the case, because obviously we learn that, it was this like evil orphanage and like the man running it and whatever. But she's saying no, his ghost has come back and abusing me again, and so the friend stays the night, and we get this wonderful sequence of the ghost appearing at the window behind her in the middle of the night and killing the friend, and the friend is like up in the ceiling bleeding, and the Gaddis comes out and like sees this, and this is actually a setup for the main plot for who the characters are, is that we have, I think it's like 6 characters, maybe 7 including this one who dies here at the start, but they essentially were living at this orphanage where once the woman who ran it like died, the husband who was sort of left behind to run it was actually a bit of an evil prick, and
Yes.
You know, we would yell at them, lock them in rooms, just treat them like shit. And eventually, once you get into the black arts, was essentially building up to try and like sacrifice them to a demon that he'd picked out of the book, Moloch specifically, which is very similar to it's either the exact same name or it's close to, I think it was maybe Moloch, which was the demon that became a robot through the internet in episode 8 of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
If you recall that episode.
It does sound familiar.
It was called I, Robot, Eugene, and Willow starts chatting with the demon on the computer and kind of falls for him a little bit.
Of course she does.
Classic episode.
Yeah. Now, is well, I mean, I don't know if you remember or not, but did they reference this demon in the first one, or?
I mean, you're right. I don't remember. I don't think so, but I mean,
yeah,
because the demon that was after her wasn't this demon. It was. There is something at the end that kind of confused this for me a little bit, but I mean, because we see Alfie like going home to this apartment or hotel, whatever it is, with Nara, is like they're lying. She's lying in bed, and we get this really good scare moment where she's turning the light on and off again, and the demon / devil from the first movie is like coming towards her from behind, and it's a really good little creepy scare, and the design and the makeup is still fantastic. But I think that's one of the interesting things about the premise of this movie is that she's kind of pulled into this other plot by these other characters who say, hey, we found out you survived the devil, and that makes you kind of special. It gives you some like special properties. I'm like, okay, make her feel special. I'm okay with that, you know, given that she survived. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you say pulled in, but I would say she's kidnapped.
Oh yeah, she's kidnapped. Yes. I was going to get to like how they pull her into it, but yeah, she's.
So, I think where my confusion came from is because I remember Alfie from the first movie, but then I think I might have missed something, or for some reason I got it into my head that like when she's pulled into this other plot, for some reason I was thinking that she was part of the orphanage or these like orphan kids, and I got really confused because I was like, wait a minute, like the orphanage didn't have anything to do with the first one, right? And then eventually like I was able to kind of clear it up, you know, because, you know, as things go on, you know, like stuff becomes more clear and with context. But I don't know. I feel like I missed something or misremembered something in my head. For some reason, I was trying to like, you know, justify these kind of new characters and plot with like stuff from the first movie, and I was having a hard time. So I think that's where a lot of my confusion was coming from, which I don't blame the movie for. It was, I don't know, something weird that was going on in my head.
Yeah. So
too much Halloween candy.
To get back to the main thing, so these orphans were treated like crap. The guy who was doing this,
Bruce Wayne.
Shut up. No, I'm not sure how the pronunciation. It was Ayub. Is the name Ayub? Ayub, yeah, Ayub.
Yeah.
But he, you know, he's doing all this, and essentially we find out the kids banded together and killed him. They murdered him to get away from him. They lock him in his secret basement and set him on fire. And what's happening is that the ghost is coming after them now. And that because he'd made this bond with this demon, this Moloch, this was giving him some extra ghostly powers now in the afterlife, and he was coming after them for revenge. Because he'd promised Moloch all these souls, like all these kids, they're tied to this demon now too. And one of them's already died, you know, from the opening scene. So they've brought in Alfie, tried to explain what's going on, and they need her help. That her blood, and she can like say the incantation and like end this. And there's some twists later on that this is not exactly true. Which is actually one of the things I like about the plot, is that, you know, we're introduced to this Gaddis in the opening scene, and she seems really scared, and she looks abused and beaten and very vulnerable. And what actually turns out is, I don't like how a lot of this is like discovered, because it kind of feels that Alfie just starts making these weird assumptions and guesses halfway through the plot. But I do actually love the idea that one of the kids actually liked the guy and was kind of like, Alfie calls it Stockholm Syndrome, and you could argue if it's that or not.
Sure.
But she worships him, and she actually, through like her own magic and using this Black Bible, was able to, like, her bringing the friend over was all a trap to like raise the spirit. And it was like, oh, we need someone who's got a connection to something more powerful. and that's why her and the kind of the was it Christie, the nerdy one who did all the research, she's actually been convinced by Gaddis to help with this, saying that this will be better for them in the long run. She can I mean, Christie has like a face turn later where she sort of like turns against her because she realizes all this is evil and bad and blah blah blah. But Gaddis is trying to raise him and wants Tim to come back and wants the evil and wants all these things. And it reveals like that she started laughing in the opening scene. You know, we see more of it where she's like laughing maniacally. And I do think like her performance and when she does go full evil and like it's, you know, and Aob kind of essentially possesses her and like becomes part of her. I think all that stuff, like there's a great jump scare later on in the film when she's like hunting the kid, she's hunting Nara, and she just kind of like appears and says hello Nara, and it's the scene where Nara like shoves the electric shock baton into her mouth. That's a really good scene.
Good. Yeah,
really good.
Yeah, no, that's great. And she does a lot of like really creepy stuff. Like I forget who it is, but yeah, you have this like kind of like this, you know, solitary room that people get locked in, and yeah, there's like one scene where she locks like one of the other, you know, people in, and she's kind of just
the drunk
by that
guy,
little and like she's just kind of by the window and like just like being very like insane and maniacal, and it's very very well done. It's a great performance, like, and she just has this very kind of creepy, unhinged way about her that
I think
it works really well.
I think maybe one of the most impressive things about both this and the first one, but this one especially with this performance and some of the other ghostly stuff, and even the man himself, when we see him as a ghost, he's always quite creepy. The way he smiles at them is really good. And I think what stands out to me is that this is stuff that you can see that's just been slightly off in how it would look in like most movies where it would feel generic. And somehow, and I think this is maybe a testament to the direction, because it's not just one performer, it's every example across the board manages to actually work and be creepy and look good. And I feel like that's a testament to the direction here from the director who wrote and directed both movies, Timo Tahanto. I feel like this is his skill. Like, he's really good at this. He knows how to direct this and make it look and feel right. And because you can see it, you can like this creepy smiling and talking creepy. Like, you can see how this is a complete disaster. Just a couple of notches off to the left in any other movie.
You could see this as like you know, like if they did American remake of this, you could see how bad it would be. Like, you just feel like, oh man, if just some, you know, who cares, generic Hollywood director was doing a lot of this stuff, it could just so easily go the other way. But yeah, like you said, it just works. Like, there's something about it that's, you know, very creepy, and again, like it's hard not to make comparisons to Evil Dead. Like, it feels very Evil Dead-ish, you know, but at the same time, like, not in a rip-off way. Like, it feels like, oh, maybe this is something that was like inspired by it, but like, yeah, it still feels like it's like own thing, you know? Yeah,
definitely inspired. I would say, obviously there's comparisons to like someone becoming a Deadite, but at the same time it also feels like it's more unique and like its own thing, where she feels kind of like a creepy ghost, but with a mix of a little bit of Deadite with a little bit of, you know, some other thing. It's an interesting concoction.
Yeah, and it's not all the time, but every now and again there's like a little touch that's like, okay, that feels like something Sam Raimi would do, like when the saw blades are like flying. You know, that feels like a very Evil Dead shot.
That was Chekhov's saw blade. So basically,
yes. I thought the same thing.
There's an incantation that they have Alfie do, which turns out later was actually an incantation to like bring the ghost back properly. Right? This was all a ruse by the Gaddis. But during this scene, like, a lot of chairs start flying around, books start flying around in this basement, and there's a couple of like buzzsaw blades just sort of like on the wall. And it sort of shakes a little bit, and then at the end of the scene, it does kind of fly towards someone, and it misses them. And it does a really cool thing where it sort of goes along the wall, and the person's in the corner, and she has to duck, and it's kind of fine. And then it stays there, and it's like, I mean, okay, the saw blade. It was fun watching the saw blade fly around, but you know, it didn't have the moment, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you forget about it because you're not in that room. You think, oh, they've already done the saw blade thing. They didn't go into anyone, but they used it. They did something fun with it. And then later on, when you know, we're in proper spoilers here, Alfie gains the ability to have a bit of telekinesis, and she uses the
I
saw
like this,
blade. Well, because that's the thing I liked as well, is that Alfie essentially, the dying words of Christie, who did all the research on the book. She's like, read the book. You've got the power to like use it and like take things from it. She reads and she like basically turns her hand into a demon hand. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I said it kind of embraces, because I feel like sometimes the movie's taking itself very seriously and it's able to do that and still bounce around the tones very effectively. But here, she effectively, to use her telekinesis, has to throw up the devil horns. And I couldn't help but feel that this was like intentionally like, hey, look how metal this is. She's she's controlling things with devil horns.
Yeah, and I love this. Like, she was already like, pretty badass, but like I love just taking it to the new, the next level. Like, like, oh no, like, yeah, like she's like full on. Again, it's like Ash getting like a chainsaw hand or something. It's like, yes, like, all right, we're already rooting for this person, but now it's like, yeah, go mess them up. Let's see some carnage.
One of my favorite images in the whole movie might be she shoves the saw blade in the back of the head of Gaddis when she's evil, and when she's leaving the basement, there's just like a sort of like Gaddis is sort of kneeling down, seemingly dead. And she's not really. She comes back in like a minute, but the silhouette of her like kneeling down, but you can also do it. But obviously she has a saw blade in the back of her head, so it's just the image of that just looked really kind of wonderful. So there's a lot of great things in the movie. It's weird because I feel like all the big set pieces we're going to talk about we're going to be very positive on, because it's not those that are the problem. It's the pacing between these set pieces, because it's after like a lot of the stuff in the basement where it feels like the movie's really starting to get going, where it kind of slows down again. They're in one of the bedrooms just kind of debating what to do, and I'm like, really, we're slowing down? Like, I feel like this is a roller coaster. This should be ramping up. To use in fact, the perfect comparison for this is the 2013 Evil Dead, because the 2013 Evil Dead has perfect pacing, right? That is one of the things that makes that movie great, is that it has perfect pacing where it does start off kind of slow. It's just setting things up. We're getting the characters. We're getting to care about them, whatever. But it starts to casually ramp up, and it starts to get quicker and quicker, and it just keeps going. It keeps topping itself, and it keeps doing that. This is a bit more up and down, where it'll go down again, and you'll feel like, it's kind of slow now. But then when it comes back, and you get the the electric shock in the mouth scene, with Gaddis running around all creepy, and then eventually you get like when she's able to kill Gaddis seemingly, or Gaddis has failed to do what she's supposed to do. And she's saying, "No, father, don't abandon me." And then the ghost of the father, rips his way out from inside of her, almost chestburster style, in a way. And that was pretty glorious. The only horror stuff that kind of falls flat a little bit is there's a couple of effects where stuff comes out of her mouth that's very CG.
That didn't look great.
Yeah, that looked a bit rough. But basically when the ghost eventually gets out of her, it runs towards the last remaining character from the new group who's alive. And it was obviously always going to be him who was the one who might survive, because he was the only one who was sympathetic and was nice to her.
Which is true, yeah.
But Alfie jumps in front and the ghost goes into her. And they never explain this properly, I don't think, but she stabs herself, and I think the idea is that she's different from other people. Like, if she kills herself with the ghost in her, like, it'll work and it'll kill him.
Sure.
But we see her kind of go to like an afterlife kind of place where the demon Moloch is like, yeah, you tried to kill yourself, but your soul's not like yours to like take. I've had claim on your soul since you were 4, and this was the part that kind of confused me a little bit, because I was like, but you weren't the demon who was after in the first movie, unless I'm misremembering. I might be. It's entirely possible I might be.
Maybe, because this is like it basically looks kind of almost like a big, like, I don't know, like deer skull god or something. And I'm trying to think if there was that imagery in the first one, because like you said, there's like a little bit of like a flashback scene, and we see that kind of like the witch, like with the long hair, which is who I remember from the first one.
Yeah, that's what I remember too.
But I'm trying to think if maybe there was something more, like maybe there might have been another demon presence or something, or maybe that was like a big demon that got named but never shown in the first one or something.
Yeah, or maybe she was working for him or something. I don't know. Like, this could just be a detail from the first one that I just completely forgotten, and therefore this is okay. But yeah, it was kind of weird. I was like, oh, okay, all right, whatever. but basically doesn't let her die, so she wakes back up, because it's not her time to go yet. So, and this is kind of the thing where it's like, okay, this is clearly like they want a third one. They want to do a third one here because this is setting up that there's the, she's going to have to properly win her soul back or something, because she's eventually, whenever she does die in whatever way it happens, like she's going to hell, and she's going to have to like find a way out of that. So, her magic hand does seem to go away at the end. When she comes back, her hand goes back to normal color. So I guess her telekinesis is gone, but I mean she still has the book. So, very up and down. There's some fun moments because the first one who actually gets turned is actually because they leave Nara upstairs with the one girl who doesn't want to go down with them, and she turns. So we actually get her kind of one-on-one like chasing after Nara. No, this is not the electric shock one though, because that's Gaddis later on when because Gaddis gets a lot of screen time when she turns. This one, like there's a whole thing where it's actually kind of silly on her behalf, but she tries to get to Nara, who's hiding on top of like a big sort of cabinet, and then Nara basically makes the cabinet tip over on top of her, and that kind of deals with her for a little bit. Because this is kind of the moment where Alfie comes in and beats her to death with like a crowbar, and the others are like, wait, why did you have to kill her? Maybe we could have done something. They're not ready to accept that this is how extreme things are, basically. She ends up coming back later. I actually kind of like the visual of her waking up and she's like wrapped in sheets when she's attacking someone later on.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of neat. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I say, it's very up and down. There's a lot of downtime in between all these set pieces.
Like the whole problem is that it just feels like all that stuff just goes on like way too long, because like I don't really have a problem with the story. I don't really have a problem with these characters. Like it's totally fine. It just feels like they take so much time to get kind of in between the set pieces, when a lot of times it can just kind of be distilled pretty fast. Like, hey, here, here's who we are, here's why we're here. Instead it feels like at times there's a lot of back and forth and whatnot. But it's, I mean, maybe that sounds harsh though, but I mean, maybe it's just because the other stuff is so good that like, you're chomping at the bit to get to the next
one thing it is very guilty of at the start though, this was kind of annoying me for the first like half hour, is after she's kidnapped specifically, is that they keep saying that they've brought her here to do something they mean her no harm, and they keep talking about it, and every time Alfie says, oh god, what is it, what am I here to do, they keep kind of dodging the question and not answering it properly, and I'm like, just say it. What is she here for? Like, why are you beating around the bush? It was really annoying, especially since once they finally explained it, it didn't really feel like, well, you're special because you defeated the devil, and because of that, you can help us with this thing now. And it makes you unique. It makes you the only one who can do this. And again, it's revealed later, of course, that it was more that because she's connected to an even more powerful demon, or the devil itself, that like she has the power to bring the ghost back properly, because she's actually being tricked by. They're all being tricked by Gaddis, and to an extent Christie, but even Christie's kind have been taken under the wing and manipulated by Gaddis. But that stuff was I actually think the story's fine. The story's fine. It's a fine enough sequel. It's a little standalone, but that's okay. I maybe wish it didn't go for the house in the middle of nowhere again, just because it feels kind of similar. Sure. But I do respect that there's a human who's working on the side of the demons in the movie specifically. And I do appreciate that it advances things by giving her own power and a bit more agency with the satanic stuff. But pacing is an issue. At almost 2 hours, it is definitely too long for the type of movie it is. And the first one had that problem too. It was also too long. It needs to just tighten things up. I think if it tightened up, I might even call it a great movie. As it is, it kind of goes down a few notches because of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I would absolutely recommend. Like, it's not like it hurts it enough that, you would say, like, oh, don't bother or anything. It's just like one, like, I don't know, I guess I don't want to say minor thing, but it is just like a very obvious flaw that it's like, oh, man, if this wasn't here, it's like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, we're still singing its praises, but it's just that it sucks that there's this asterisk that's, you feel like you have to bring it up. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's still one of the best horror movies of the year, right? And admittedly, that's a faint praise maybe this year because there's obviously a lot less movies. But even the first one, which had similar problems, and we were impressed well enough by it, is that that still stuck out as being a really solid movie that year if you're into horror. And I think this one again sticks out as being, no, this is much better than the vast majority of what we review in terms of new horror movies. When we look at this year, the obvious ones that rank above it are maybe The Invisible Man and maybe a couple other things that came out. But it's still, above the average by quite a margin. It's just, it misses. It's actually kind of impressive just how similar overall it feels to the first one in that sense.
Yeah.
And it's only a little bit lesser than the first just because, well, it's not as surprising this time that it does all these kind of things.
That's true.
It's maybe a little bit just more of the same in some ways. It does shake up it in a few distinct details, but not maybe in enough ways. But that's not necessarily a terrible thing. If you like the first one and you want more of the wackiness, you want more of the gore, you want more of the cool, creepy, genuinely well-designed and well-directed moments, I think there's a lot here to enjoy in that sense. But yeah, I guess that's basically it. Would you like to rate May the Devil Take You Too?
This is kind of the hard part because, man, I really want to give it a high score. I think I really want to give it like an 8 or maybe even 8.5, but I think just because the pacing and even like even with like the pacing stuff, like it also sucks and it's like really uneven too. Like, I don't know if it'd make it better if it was like you kind of get all that stuff out in one stretch and then you just have like a really nice smooth roller coaster the rest of the movie, or the fact that it is like a little up and down. I don't know, but yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go just a little bit below and give it a 7.5. I mean, still like a really good score, but I mean, easily if it just gets tightened up a bit, it would definitely be 8, probably even like an 8.5, honestly. But yeah, unfortunately I have to go 7.5 right now.
Yeah, I want to go with a straight 7. And I think the pacing issues are a problem not just because of this, the stuff in between the set pieces. Is that I think by the ending, I think even the wackier stuff outstays its welcome a little bit. I'm thinking in the last like 15-20 minutes, there's a whole scene where she's having to like find Nara again, and she has to run back into the building, which is now like on fire. And there's a lot of like running around, and the ghost is popping up, and it just kind of feels like, I'm ready for this to wrap up now. I'm ready for you to get your conclusion out of the way. And I don't know if I need this whole section. And it's not that it was bad per se, but I was kind of just zoning out a little bit because I felt like, okay, we've done enough of this now. We don't need to have more peril. So even some of the set piece stuff towards the end, I could have trimmed a bit as well. So I'll go with a 7, which it's still a good movie. I'd still say it's a solid sequel with a lot of good things in it. So, and if you like the first one, if given the same things that were good about the first one are pretty much good about this one too, I feel like you probably like this too. So
definitely,
that's the good news. That's the good news, everyone. So, all right. Well, we've rated the movie. If you made it this far into the discussion, let us know by putting the word orphanage into the comments. Word orphanage to let us know you got to this point. Tim's going to do his pose. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, pose. Yes, and that hand will be exactly where my face usually goes, so that'll be an interesting photoshopping challenge for me. So I'll just flip you. I'll just flip you so it's on the other side. There you go. Easy. But okay, well that's pretty much us. Get us on Twitter at StreamsMidnight. We're for updates and you can ask us questions and whatnot. Get some silly shenanigans. We mentioned patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, very important. Bonuses, obviously a great way of supporting us. $1 per month is more than we would ever make if you watched every ad on every video that we put out on the channel in a month. So even $1 is fantastic. That said, though, if you want to support us for free, if that's not an option, that is totally understandable. Hitting the like button is a really great way of helping, and lets YouTube promote us a little bit more and all that kind of thing. So yeah. So thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.